Welcome back. You're watching TVC News Hour.
Nigeria is set to witness a new flow of investments into its oil sector with the passage by the Senate of the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill. The bill has now bundled the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation into 3 entities amid other innovations. The bill took 12 years to get passed, and the passage of that bill comes as former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan again canvassed fiscal federalism and implementation of the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference. Jonathan said the implementation of the recommendations remain a panacea to socio-economic and security challenges plaguing the country. For more perspectives on this, we have with us in the studio lawyer Malika Ugwemmadu. Thank you for your time on TVC News. Many issues now really in Nigeria, but let's start with the passing of the PIGB by the Senate. How timely is that?
Well, of course, if it took as much as 12 years, then the issue of time was completely thrown overboard. Essentially because that bill becoming an act now ought to underscore and create the pathway for an effective oil industry in our country. If it took us as much as 12 years to get that passed into law, you would agree with me that it hasn't generated as much excitement as it ought to be. We have always been wondering why very important bills take as much as 12 years, 7 years, like the FOI bill took as much as 6, 7 years too. Those are the bills that has the capacity to turn around the fortune of the country and redirect us towards the pathway for progress. Yet it takes this much. But when it comes to the appropriations, you know, allocating money to the members of the National Assembly doesn't suffer that setback in terms of time. But that said, okay. I think it is gratifying that eventually we're breasting the tape because it is a very important piece of legislation, one that will not just focus on local content, it will also empower the operators in the industry to maximize the opportunities that we have.
All right, that's still on the positives of the PIGB bill. One of it is that it would, I think the NNPC and the DPR and PPRA will be taken off when we have another unifying body, you know, manning this, the oil and gas sector. But will it be better off, or are we going to have some of the same of we had in the past? Because this will still be run by the same human being. So what difference will it make if we have this introduction, you know, to phase out the old one?
Well, I think that's a very important question because there is a consensus already out there that it's not so much about the legislation or the nature of the legislation created. It has everything to do with the operators of that legislation. And therefore, as the going goes, the rope does not make the monk. So no matter how beautiful the letters of the law is, if you have operators of the law who have no faith in those pieces of legislation or who are not patriotic enough or motivated by the quest for nation building, you would find that it has taken 12 years just so to have another beautiful legislation in place. But by and large, I think that the PIB bill, now an act, if it has been assented to by the acting president.
Yet to be assented.
Yet to be assented. At least it has been passed in the National Assembly.
In the Senate,
in the Senate, and needs the concurrence of the House of Representatives before it can be presented as a bill to be assented to by the acting president. I think the beauty of it is that it is a response. It is a response to all the challenges, all the major observations that the operators in that industry have observed. It is a response to the need to empower, like I said, local content, in which case indigenous operators in the industry, unlike what we have had in the past, become better empowered and better positions to deal with the upstream sector of our economy.
Okay, because of time, quickly now, let's go quickly to the statement credited to the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, calling for fiscal federalism and, of course, the implementation of the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference. What do you have to say about that quickly?
Well, very quickly, one can understand the sentiment expressed by the former president. He superintended over the affairs of this country when that conference took place. And therefore, if he had exercised his discretion and the wisdom of the government at that time to kickstart the process, you can only imagine that he would wish that the outcomes are implemented. Now, at the heart of federalism itself is the fiscal component of it. For a heterogeneous society like ours, you can't run away from it. If you do, you harvest the crisis. And that is precisely what we had, you know, that occurred with the entire Niger Delta struggle. And some would dare say, even with the Boko Haram situation. Now, what does it mean? It means the juxtaposition of state powers at different tiers of government and allowing the component federating unit to develop and operate at their own pace with some measure of autonomy. Now, what that also means is that at the rate they operate, they will also carry along with them the possibilities that are, you know, that are within the areas and spheres of their control. If you go to the northeast, and as at that time, it became predominant that people want to practice perhaps Sharia law, and you are saying no, your Section 10 abhors any form of religion because it's a secular state, you run into a collision course with, so it is long overdue. It was not a Jonathan idea. I mean, starting from 1954, Richard Constitution, we have toyed with the idea of a true federal constitution, and we indeed practiced a true federal constitution from 1960 up to 1963 with the unholy incursion of the military that brought us to our knees as a unitary government. Even up to this moment, if you look at the constitution, the extant constitution of the country, you would see serious vestiges of unitary form of government in which a Chief Justice of Nigeria is expected from Abuja to superintend into the appointment processes of a judge in Osun State. So there's a where an Inspector General of Police must give a directive before a Commissioner of Police in Adamawa can. No. Those are contradictory in terms. Those are contradictory in essence. And they're also contradictory in operation. All
right, let's leave it at that. Balaki Ogumadu, a lawyer in Lagos, we appreciate your analysis on TVC News Hour.
Thank you.